Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for the new moon in Scorpio, which is happening on November 7th. And this is at 10:01 a.m. Central Standard Time. And it didn't escape my noticing that when I was looking at the ephemeris, it was in Eastern Standard Time, and it was like 11:01, so it was like those 111s. And of course, November is an 11 month, so we're looking at a lot of that. It's interesting too, because I think I added up the date. Let me think about this again. So the 11th and the 7, that adds up to a 9. And then we have 2011, which is an 11 universal year. And so that's an 11. So if you add up 9 plus 11, that's another 11, isn't it? And so that is a very strong vibration. The number 11 is a master number, by the way. And I'm an 11 life path, which is the spiritual teacher. So for all of us in November, this is a time of really going within. And of course, there's a strong Scorpio connection in November. And for this new moon in Scorpio, this is a very concentrated Scorpio period too, because we have the sun at 15 degrees of Scorpio. We have the moon at 15 degrees of Scorpio. We have Jupiter at the 29th degree of Scorpio. So Jupiter is at the critical degree of Scorpio. And this is a very powerful time, especially since it's the day before Jupiter goes into Sagittarius. And so that's why I'm going to be talking about these transits as well. The Jupiter in Sag transit and the North Node into Cancer on the same day as this new moon in Scorpio. I feel like, having been doing these types of forecasts for a while now, that this is quite unusual to see this all kind of clustered in this short period of time. So to me, something is definitely up. And I just want to talk about the nice things about Scorpio, because we always hear the dark stuff. But Scorpio is a sign that is deep. Some people say, oh, Scorpio is so intense, but it's deep. It's not shallow. Okay. And so what I want you to do is I want you to look at your life. Now, this helps if you have your natal chart where you can see where this new moon is falling in your chart. And look at that area of life. And how can you deepen that area? Meaning, how can you take whatever that is and make it much more profound? So let's say this new moon is falling in your second house of earned income. And I'm picking this particular house on purpose because we don't think of the second house as that mystical an area, right? Because it's dealing with the practical. This is the house that Taurus rules, and so it's an earth house, but it's dealing with your self-esteem as well as the money that you earn in your possessions. So it isn't just like about tangible goods or anything like that. But what about if you were to set an intention, which is what people do at the time of the new moon, and basically that's like planting the seeds of thought into a particular area, into fertile soil in a particular area of your life, and saying to yourself, I want to deepen my connection with money. Now, doesn't that sound kind of profane? Because we think of money, especially those who have been taught that money is evil or that it's dirty, and meaning that it's coming from this dark place of greed, of, when you don't have it, of lack, that feeling of having to give it to somebody who already has so much. Why do I have to give it? That resentment, that, there can be all these really dark emotions connected to money. What if you said, I want to make money something that is not just physical. I want to charge money, imbue it with this kind of a mystical vibe, where every time that I handle money, I feel it nourishing me at a very deep level. And I want to become empowered by money, because Scorpio, I'll say both of the rulers of Scorpio, we have Pluto and we have Mars. Pluto is connected to the power aspect of it, but Mars is our get up and go, our drive, and, our ambition about it. So taking both of those ruling planets and saying, I want that sense of power to be mine when it comes to money. Not so that I can walk all over somebody else, so that I have freedom, so that I can choose what kind of work I'm doing. So I don't feel like I'm a slave where I have to do this, I have to do that. I have to live here, I have to live there. What if somebody decided to treat money, it's almost like alchemy, I guess, where you're not just looking at it from the mundane perspective, but what you can transform it into. And actually, Pluto is all about transformation. So that's an example of it. Obviously, I can go into it with different areas, but to try to kind of deepen your connection. And this will be an emotional thing that's happening here. So you're putting those emotional vibes onto whatever area. And let me give another example, like the 6th house, which is your dharma, your work, your service to others. If you have a pattern of maybe you work a job, to me, like the 6th house is a job and the 10th house is a career. But it's really the work itself. Let's put it that way. Let's say you don't like the work that you do. I'm not talking about the job title, but you just don't like the actual work. And you want to do something that you want to do. Then that becomes your job. I mean, actually, I'm kind of paraphrasing Buddha. I think Buddha said something like, your job is to find out what your job is, or something like that. I think. I hope I'm not putting words into Buddha's mouth. But the point being that some people accept their fate. And they say, well, this is where I'm at. This is where it's going to be. I just have to learn how to tolerate it. If you kind of lie down in your life and just kind of give up on that, in that sense, that's on you. Because you can develop a beautiful ferocity where you're not willing to settle for less in your life. And I see that as a scorpionic trait of, being all in on your life and not, mailing in your life every day that you get up. What kinds of things do you do, and do you like what you do? Are you just a zombie? Are you just kind of going through the motions? So I think that that's how I would play this new moon in Scorpio, because we have Jupiter still hanging around here for that first week. And again, that 29th degree, that critical degree, all of the wisdom of that transit kind of resting in that final degree. And, I reflect myself where this has been for me. And I don't really see it from a profound perspective in terms of Jupiter and Scorpio. And I feel like that's possibly because of the nature of what Jupiter represents and what Scorpio represents. I think that Scorpio is not well suited for being or Jupiter's not well suited for being in Scorpio. And I think it will function much more beautifully in its own sign, okay? So that's something to look forward to, that shift, okay? And that's happening on the 7th of the month. I mean the 8th, the very next day. And so I have videos already up for each of the signs on what you might expect for Jupiter in your particular sun sign, or you can even play that as the rising sign. So check that out on my channel. And so I'm not going to really talk about that, but I just wanted to make you aware of it happening the very next day. But the other big news is that the North Node is changing signs on the same day as the new moon in Scorpio, and this is going to be in another water sign. It's going to be in Cancer. So, you know, it's funny. I was just thinking, oh, wow, this is really weird, too. I hope that you'll indulge me since I'm an American, because I know that based on my analytics that I have a fair number of people from Australia, England, and India also watching here. And Canada. I think I have more viewers from England. So you know what, Canada, you're going to have to take the back seat. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you know, from all of those countries, and obviously they're all English speaking. Even India, a lot of people seem to speak English. But the interesting thing is that in America, we're having the midterm elections on November 6th. So that's the day before the new moon in Scorpio. Now, the midterm elections are a time that are non-presidential years. Okay, so we have presidential elections every 2 years. So believe it or not, we had that presidential election 2 years ago. You would never know it based upon everything that's happening, because it's constantly like we're like in Groundhog's Day, where we're just reliving the election day after day after day. So these midterms have proven to be particularly important because of that 2016 presidential election. What will they reveal about the state of the nation? Happening the day before the new moon in Scorpio and the North Node going into Cancer. Why is that significant? Because the United States is a Cancerian country. And that's almost giving me goose pimples, because there's a sense of destiny with the United States right now. And this is a very critical period of time. So the next 18 months, when Cancer is going to be or the North Node is going to be in Cancer, that we're going to be experiencing a lot of fated events that are probably something, if they are destiny for the United States, they're destiny for the whole world, because the United States does seem to impact the rest of the world in one way or the other. And so I believe that the rising sign of the United States is Gemini. I don't think it's the moon. I think it's the rising sign, which also makes sense to me because of the media, the very strong presence of that kind of, but almost on the tabloid-esque nature that I associate with the United States in certain ways. And even like that kind of pop culture thingy going on. So That is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. We're Jupiter in Sagittarius. So it would be really interesting. I'm not one of those mundane astrologers. That's not my particular strength in terms of, that's not a good word, not strength, but that's not my particular interest, is trying to chart the course for a particular nation and the events therein. But I'm sure there are going to be videos, maybe there already have been created about this, and in talking about the world events as well. And so I'm sure you can find them if that interests you. But yeah, I mean, I think that even on a personal level that we are going to see a shift happening in this second week of November, just by virtue of other things, astrological as well as some of these other events. I mean, even in other countries, I've been just seeing that a lot of movement is happening. Reminds me of the Eight of Wands, where there's like maybe this state of suspension and then all these things start happening. Lots of change happening, lots of things that you have to kind of adapt to very quickly. So having said that, I just want to touch on a few particular points of this new moon. We have Mercury in Sag. Now that's interesting because the truth-telling, with Jupiter in that last degree of Scorpio, that the secret's coming out at the new moon, even though this is, you think of the full moon as the big reveal, there could still be kind of stuff that wants to come out. Jupiter in and of itself is associated with ethics and things like that. So things coming out that were hidden before, that last gasp of wanting to reveal those things. Venus is in Libra, and with the Scorpio energy, there's a potential for very deep feelings in relationships, but also kind of stubborn attitudes where people don't want to take no for an answer in terms of if they are with someone and the other person is trying to express some truth, Mercury and Sag, and the person doesn't want to listen, the person has their ears closed to the truth, that's not going to go over well because you are trying to uncover the truth. You're not trying to hide from it right now. And Scorpio is a very fierce sign, probably because of that combination of Pluto and Mars. That's nothing to sneeze at. And so when Scorpio is on a truth-telling binge, or whatever you want to call it, craze, they can really just tell it like it is, but in a way that's kind of harsh. And even Sag is pretty blunt. So if there's any kind of love things going on with Venus in Libra, that could kind of be blown to smithereens in relationships. And in fact, I really see the Scorpio energy as getting rid of trivial things, which is good in my opinion, because a lot of times people, if you think about the contrast between Libra, where Venus is residing, in retrograde, remember it started retrograding in Scorpio, so there is that connection to Scorpio with the retrograde. But now in Libra, which is much more lighthearted, there is that comparison between the 7th house that Libra rules and the 8th house that Scorpio rules, which is like day and night. Libra is the union, but it's the marriage certificate. The 7th house is legal documents, and so it could be any kind of legal agreement that a marriage is, and the ceremony, the everything that shows, that proves that two people are a couple. But the 8th house is that down and dirty nitty-gritty of the emotions involved, the intimacy, the psyches being probed one to the other, the intimacy that a lot of people say, oh yeah, the sex. No, that's only part of it. I mean, there's that sense of like bearing your soul and the deep recesses of the person's psyche, the secrets. So you can see that one is more, I was going to say lighter, because the masculine represents the positive, and that is Libra. And the Scorpio is the feminine, the negative. And the two together are, you know, they're important. They're both important because you want that sense of having a partner that it's kind of like a definition, in the sense that you have this relationship and it's defined so that others understand who you are to one another. That's fine. But you also can't just keep it there. Otherwise, it's kind of like playing roles, but it's not really getting into the true meaning of what it means to be a couple. So I think that there might be some themes regarding, you know, you say you love me, but do you really love me? You know, Scorpio's always trying to get people to prove that they love them. They don't necessarily, you know, there's a lot of kind of suspicion with Scorpio, where the person puts the other through a test to see if it's true that the person loves them. And yet, love isn't easily defined, is it? So you can't really prove an emotion to another person at the end of the day. We all have our own ways of defining love and the way that we feel that what love represents to us and how we want to express love. With Scorpio, there's a feeling that there's more than meets the eye, that there's something, you know, somebody may be saying one thing on the surface, but down deep inside it's something else. And I think that's what I was getting at when I was talking about suspicion. So the interesting thing about this particular new moon is that we have the sun and moon in conjunction in Scorpio, which of course is true of any new moon, that they're going to be in conjunction. But then we have Mercury in Sag, and Sagittarius is a freedom-loving sign. And so we're talking about the freedom to communicate in the way that feels right for the person. So there could even be like in relationship issues, which I think may definitely come to the surface right now. This feeling of somebody trying to force their partner to say that they love them, or, you know, to try to prove it that way. And the person kind of resisting because they don't want to be forced, because they want to do it from their own, with their own volition, that it's like coming from themselves, that somebody isn't just doing, you know, forcing them, strong-arming them into doing it. And then we have Venus in Libra, and Mars is in Aquarius. And they're almost exactly the same degree. Mars is at 25 Aquarius, and Venus is at 26 Libra. So this is forming a trine, which is a very positive angle for Venus and Mars, the divine lovers. But what's interesting about this is that Venus is retrograding, and it's also in an air sign, as is Mars. So even though Venus is in Libra, and Libra is associated with love, there still is always this detachment with Libra. You would be surprised if you were to sit with somebody who's a Libra person and listen to them talk about how much they love their partner, or just kind of almost like obsessing over this relationship. And yet they are not necessarily that emotional in the sense that we would talk about a particular, romantic relationship, monogamous relationship. They may have a lot of very chill ideas about their relationships that are not associated with, Scorpios, very involved, almost obsessed sometimes with their significant other. So in this particular case, with this trine happening, there's a sense of freedom. Mars in Aquarius is not like an influence that is about conforming to the demands of a relationship. It's like my way or the highway, but not trying to control somebody else, but saying, I want the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. In relationships, you really can't have that attitude all the time, because you do have to regard the other person. And it can be very difficult sometimes for a person like this to truly have that kind of regard for the other party, because if you have this in your natal chart, for instance, if you have Mars in Aquarius, even if you have the sun in, Libra. I don't know if you could have Mars in Aquarius. You probably could. Even if you have something like that, you may, and you want to be in a relationship, there may be this part of you that wants to be able to come and go as you please, to be able to travel without your partner and not have to answer to your partner, and things like that. And that can put strain on a relationship. But it's so funny, because in this particular case, we're really talking about differences, because you have the sun and moon in Scorpio, and a Scorpio type of a person wants to possess their partner, body, mind, and soul. Okay. And so because of these two planets squaring off, or signs squaring off, we have a square from the sun to Mars and from the moon to Mars, even though we have a trine from Venus to Mars. So the ego being engaged, and the emotions being very volatile. Now, I'm kind of almost reading this as a full moon in a way. And I think that's good. I think those are good instincts on my part, because given the fact that this new moon is in Scorpio, it isn't like a typical new moon of just hey, let's set our intentions and have a latte, a soy latte or something. This is about really deep stuff. And I think too, one piece of advice I would leave with you is to set an intention that can transform your life. What would you like to transform in your life? Not just change mildly. An example of some mild change would be, I'd like to lose 10 pounds. But what if you said, I would like to completely transform my body from, in every possible area, not just weight-wise, but I want to have a very strong body, and I want to have a very flexible body. So these are the things I'm going to do. Okay, so I also wanted to touch briefly upon Diwali, which is an Indian, and I'm talking about the Hindu festival of lights. Maybe I shouldn't have just said India, because I'm sure there's some Westerners who follow this as well. And I thought it had something to do with a particular new moon. I guess it doesn't. They say here in Wikipedia that it can be in October or November. And I did remember one time when it was in October, and I was pretty surprised. So I guess the goddess Lakshmi is associated with Diwali, which I was not aware of. So she is the goddess of prosperity and wealth, according to Wikipedia. And so the Festival of the Lights. Now, they did say that the word Diwali, or it is called Deepa, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Deepa Valley. The V's might be W's. And from the Sanskrit word Deepa Valley, and I know deep means lamp. I knew that, so I guess they have different ways of saying it. But anyway, I love that because I love light. Now, they speculate that this is a harvest festival combined with this other aspect. And of course, when you talk about Lakshmi and you're talking about wealth and things like that, the idea of the harvest would certainly go along with that feeling of wealth. So, happy Diwali if you celebrate it, but also just, keep that in mind about the celebration over darkness, because again, with Scorpio, we're looking at this, the shadow, which can be what Scorpio represents as well. And I'm gonna leave you with this, because somebody said something to me where they accused me of having it in for a particular sign. It wasn't Scorpio. And I said to them, well, you're not listening to what I say about the other signs. If you heard me talk about other signs, you would see that I'm tough on all of the signs in terms of wanting people to tackle their shadow. Every sign has a shadow. And the more that we feel ashamed of our shadows and we don't embrace the shadow in terms of loving that part of us that we feel is unlovable, that is unacceptable, the more that you can accept that part of yourself and bring it back into the fold, which is called integration. The more you can do that, whatever it is, even if it's something that you want to get rid of within your personality, you have to accept it. And I remember hearing or reading somewhere somebody saying something to the effect of, let's say you're trying to lose weight and you feel a sense of disgust that you are overweight. They were saying you cannot be motivated by that negative emotion. You might be able to lose weight by really kind of ratcheting up the sense of disgust for yourself and being motivated in a negative way, but it's not sustaining. It's not sustainable because it's coming from a negative place. You're looking for permanent solutions to your problems. And the way that you permanently solve your problem is by accepting yourself as you are in this moment. And those parts of yourself that you're exasperated with, that you're downright ashamed about, the more that you can love those aspects of yourself, the more that you will be motivated to do for yourself that which benefits you. So when we're talking about this Scorpio new moon, you're going to be taking action, inspired action, in areas that may involve some sort of purification or, transformation, but really with Pluto, purging, getting rid of things that don't serve you, and doing so with love, not doing so with self-condemnation. So I think I'm going to leave that there. And I wish for all of you that this is a very transformative time because, again, we have these other planetary thingies happening right alongside this profound shift with the new moon in Scorpio. Take care, you guys. Bye.